What did we learn last week? The weekend fry, all of you, all of our React knowledge has gone out the window. We started moving our first React project over, right? Which will be important for our capstones because, you guys have built a lot of HTML already. That HTML is not going down the drain. We definitely are going to be using that, but we started seeing some differences, right? We started seeing that we needed to do class name instead of class. We saw if we were using any inline style props, we had to change that over to an object. And then we also started seeing this thing called browser router, right? And that's the notion of, hey, not every component should be its own page, but we do want to be able to have multiple pages or multiple routes. So how do we link up that URL in the browser to the URL or to the component that we want to show? So we started playing around with routes. We learned about the link component and how that can replace our A tag. We started breaking up some of our files into different components so that we could make them a little bit more reusable. We're going to be learning a little bit more about that tonight and continuing on the blog project. Anything else from last week that stood out? Any light bulb moments? Did anyone struggle through JavaScript, but React is starting to make it click a little bit more? Feeling like the repetition is good, feeling like we're ready to get going in the database and full stack after this week?
I was rewatching I was not rewatching. I was watching the video from Thursday since I was out of class. And I really liked the list of terms and kind of going through those and seeing like the use states and effects are part of a hook, etc. Because that really kind of broke it down a little bit better with actually reading through those terms. So that was
Awesome.
something that stood out.
Awesome. Glad to hear that feedback. Do we have any questions, anything that popped up over the weekend, anything that we should answer before we dive back into blog project? Anyone soaked completely to the bone with all of these thunderstorms? I did not miss the humidity in California. I came back and I was like, oh, nope, want to go back. I've had enough of this already. All right. Interesting, Palash. Palash said it's the opposite for him. JS was easier to understand and struggling with React. Yeah, it kind of can go both ways, right? Some people, when you understand when you think like the computer and you execute the steps that the computer is executing, that is not normal, right? Most people think in the way that it shows up to the user, how we write the code, the order that we do it. So for the people who are thinking more like the user, React tends to be a little bit easier, right? Because we're saying, all right, this is what shows up, then this happens up at the top, and then this changes what shows up down here, or this is the interaction. I tend to like JavaScript a little bit more, and I struggled learning React for that same reason, because I think start at the top, work your way down. All right, we're calling this function. Where do we go in the code, right? So because I am a linear thinker, I struggle learning React for the same reason, because it isn't kind of top to bottom. Following those numbers is a little bit harder in React. But with that said, React tends to make sense in terms of, all right, I got this thing to show up. Now, what do I want to happen? So it's kind of going back to that baking analogy that Jen helped me realize of, are you someone who collects all the ingredients and then follows the recipe? Or are you someone who goes step by step, and when you hit that step, that's when you go and get the ingredients? So React is a little bit easier to do the latter, where you can go, all right, I'm going to build out this little hunk. Now I need to make that little thing work. Okay, now that that thing's working, what's the next thing I need to go build out or make work or whatever? JavaScript tends to be a little bit easier to see the project from start to finish and go, all right, I know here are all of the lines of JavaScript that I'm going to need to know to write. So it is a little different, and don't be afraid if you haven't had that light bulb moment quite yet of, JavaScript either on the vanilla JavaScript side or the React side. But what I would encourage you to do now is to say, all right, we are roughly 2/3 of the way through the program. Can I take what I am learning and apply it? You aren't able to make an API yet. We still have to learn databases and Node a little bit, but can I accomplish most of my capstone to the point of saying I can navigate to these different pages? I can start to see how I can build out components. I can start moving things over to React, because we only have tonight and tomorrow left in React. So tomorrow we will get a little bit more practice moving a project over. I'm going to hopefully get some of you guys started on your capstones and share live with the class, so you can start thinking about what's the real world example for moving that over. And tomorrow we will start class actually on a different link. The link is in the Career Coach channel. We will be starting over there on Laura Zoom. Let me just make sure. Yeah. So we'll be starting class over on Laura Zoom. She's going to do a networking prep session for you guys, because on Wednesday we have the Erie 21 networking event. That is at 5:30 on Lemoyne's campus. And then on Thursday, we have our happy hour down at Maxwell's. So no class Wednesday or Thursday. Hope to see you at both events. And Laura will be kicking off our session tomorrow. Also recommend checking out her networking module in Canvas before her talk tomorrow, just because she's gonna she goes over all of those tips in the video. Tomorrow we'll have her live kind of as a guest speaker. We'll be over on her Zoom. Bring any questions that you may have about networking, anything that you might be nervous about, anything that you want tips about. Laura is awesome at all of that kind of stuff. And then for the second half of class, we will switch back to our regular Zoom link, and we will dive into the last day of React, of moving projects over and all of that kind of stuff. Natasha, I saw your hand raised. Sorry, I was not ignoring you.
No, you're getting through your point. It's cool. So I just finished up with Doug, and we were going through my quiz that is tardy, and we both kind of struggled with the controlled versus uncontrolled components, because the definition we came across just didn't match what we were thinking about it. So I was like, reading it is different than looking at it in code. So I just said I would bring it up in class.
Yeah, and we covered that in office hours, not last weekend, but the weekend before. But let me see if I can find, yeah, I can demo it on this code. You don't have to follow along yet. This is just code from yesterday, or code from Thursday, I mean. Can you see my code? Is that the right monitor? It looks like it. Okay.
Yeah.
So kind of two ways that we can have an input. So if I'm looking at this input right here, it's got no value and it's got no on change on it. This means that it is an uncontrolled input. What do we mean by controlled versus uncontrolled? We're saying, does React control the rendering and the value and the on change of that input? So this is uncontrolled by React, meaning that the browser is taking care of keeping track of what's typed into it and all of that stuff. In this situation, in order to get the value or anything, we fire it through this form on submit, and then we are able to get access to the values by digging all the way into this event target elements title value, right? We've got to dig in to the document object model to pull out the value from the event of submitting the form. So this is considered an uncontrolled input. That also means that we can't write React code to say, hey, once the user types in a password when it's incorrect, wipe out that password field so they can go type in another one. So in order to make this a controlled input, what we end up having to do is set up state. So here I would say something like title and set title equals use state, and start that out as an empty string.
Mhm.
Now, this alone is not changing it from uncontrolled to controlled. What is changing it is if we come down here and say the value equals title, and on change, take the event and set the title to the event target value. Jen, this was not from last week's quiz, but the week before it. So what we're doing here is tying this. This is now a controlled input. Why is it controlled? Because React is controlling the value through the state. That
Mhm.
means that instead of having to do this huge event target elements title value, we're able to pull the title out right from the state down here. And if we wanted to, when this form was submitted, like if we wanted to clear the form, we could set the title just back to an empty string and it would work for us. So control just means we've got a value and an on change in it, usually tied to state. And then uncontrolled means that we are just letting the browser control that value and accessing it through the document object model.
So just basically think of it as controlled by the React program, basically.
Yes, because we're
Ugh.
using both value and on change.
I couldn't make that click for the life of me. Thanks, Max.
Yep. Yeah, that's one that as soon as I got through office hours, I was like, darn, we should have covered that in class. And that's always what office hours is, isn't it? Of like, ooh, I wish the whole class was here for this.
It's the wordage. It didn't make sense to me. It was like backwards or something.
That happens. And definitely that's why I asked, are there any questions at the beginning of class? Because getting that clarity sometimes is so frustrating when you read like a 4-page blog post on it and you get to the end of it and you still go, no idea what any of that means. I read the whole thing. I read the English made sense. I still have no idea, right? That happens all the time. So don't be afraid to ask questions at the beginning of class. Any other questions, anything lingering? So mini homework assignment for tonight. I'm not putting it in Canvas, but we will have time at the end of class tomorrow. So we're going to make that a mini office hours in class kind of thing. So if you have any questions about your capstone, about React concepts, about terms that you keep hearing, about things that you can read through the code and you still have no idea what it's doing, anything like that, go through end of class tonight, review the blog project, see if you are clicking on all of that. If you are clicking on all of that, see if you can remember the steps. See if you can get yourself to the point of saying, maybe I couldn't do it without the video, but maybe with the code alone or the video alone, I could kind of follow through those steps and write out that code before Max says it. So we're trying to get you to the point, right, where we don't need to know all of the steps, but we can write the code, or maybe we know all of the steps and we can't write the code. We're trying to merge those together, right? That's the point that we're trying to get to. So at your capstone, you are able to dive in, tackle that, and go from there. So think about review, not just React, but everything up until this point, because the last 30 minutes or hour or so of class tomorrow, we should have some time to review any concepts that you still might be struggling with. And don't be embarrassed if we're going all the way back to HTML or CSS and you're like, I can't get this to work. I just don't know why. Tomorrow at the end of class, we will have time to dive into that. Any other questions before we dive back into blog tonight? Jen, I will check the quiz number, but 13 sounds right. Yes, it was week 13. Which was due on the 17th, which would have been not last Sunday, but the Sunday before it. So I think most of you guys have it in. We good to get going? All right, we are going to shake it up just a little bit. Nothing terribly new, but I'm going to head to my code folder. In my week 14, I am headed to my day 4. I'm going to open up my blog and I'm going to delete my node modules. Why are we doing this instead of create React app? Because we're not starting from scratch. So in the professional work world, we wouldn't even be doing this. We would be using Git. We would be using something called branches to manage different features that we were working on, and we would just open our code and start editing it. However, we've received feedback from students cohort after cohort that if they go to the final version of the product, they have no idea where to get started or what they're looking at. So the reason why we do this day over day is that you can see the changes so that when you do go back to review this or reference this in the professional world or after graduation or even for your capstone, you can reference the progress day by day as we add to it instead of getting overwhelmed by this final version of code that's several hundred lines long. So I am in my week 14, my day 4, my blog folder. I'm going to click on my node modules and I'm going to hit Command Delete to get rid of that. That means that if you wanted to fire this project up later on, you would have to run npm space install before you were able to do your npm space start. Okay, so I'm going to copy my blog project folder. I'm going to make my week 15 folder. I'm going to make my day 1 folder. I am going to paste my my blog into my day 1. And by the way, if you like this layout of Finder instead of having to double click on all of the files, this is one of my favorite views in Finder. If you go up to the top here, there's a drop down for all of these different options. I like column mode the most. It defaults to icons, but columns just make more sense to me, easier to dig into files and come out of that. So I'm going to grab my blog. I'm going to drag that into my VS Code. I am also going to pop open a new window and also open up my day 3 all the way back from my week 9. This is our vanilla blog project that we're still sourcing code out of. So I'm going to go to my day 3 and I'm going to click on that, make sure that that is open. I'm going to keep that all the way on the left on my monitor. And then I'm going to keep my current React code, try to keep it center. So take week 14, day 4, delete the node modules inside of the blog project folder, copy the blog folder, create week 15, create day 1, paste the blog folder in there, open up that blog folder in your VS Code, also open up the week 9, day 3. So we've got code to reference as we're going. Anyone need a breather? Are we good to go on? Okay. I'm going to right click on my package.json in my blog project, in my React project. And before we can run start, I need to reinstall my node modules. Believe it or not, the computer is actually quicker to delete the node modules and reinstall them than it is to copy it from one place to another. That's one reason why we do it. Yes, Corwin, week 9, day 3 is the code that we're referencing. And 2, the other reason we do it is those node modules get really freaking big. They're only about 300 meg now, but when we carry them over from day to day to day, your Mac fills up a lot quicker, right? So that's why we go in and we delete them before we copy them into the next day. Okay, so I'm down in my terminal. I'm going to npm install. You will notice over on the left, that's what brings back our node modules folder. Never, ever, ever, ever edit code within node modules. That is a recipe for disaster. So never edit any code in node modules. Once it is done and I see my 6 high severity vulnerabilities that you don't actually need to worry about, I'm going to run my npm start. If you get a message about it changing to a different port 3000 or 3001, that is totally fine. Don't pay attention. I have to fix something really quick. That should open this page up. You might have a post, you might not have a post. Either way, that is totally fine. We are going to start a live share, and then we should be good to dive in. Indeed, Jen, be or not to be.
I am getting a surprise. I'm getting a huge error message. And I don't know why, but I can't type in my chat. I'm just gonna throw the whole thing out.
Share your screen, and then Corwin, I'll come to you next. Oh, it's interesting. I can lower your hands, but I cannot raise your hands for you. Okay, you are refresh.
I did that a couple of times. It just keeps.
Boo. All right, well, it looks like you ran your install command. So why can it not find your React router? React. For some reason, when you installed your React router last week, it didn't save into your package.json. So we're just going to reinstall it.
That's something
And now it added it in there, which is good. So we should be able to start. And I'm just going to take this part out of the URL out, and you're back in business and good to go.
Thanks.
No idea how you managed to install it without it putting it in your package.json, but
That's what I'm
doesn't
like.
matter.
How
It's
did I
fixed
do
now.
that?
Corin. Okay, so npm space install. And then npm space start after that. Did you forget a space?
No, I literally, I don't know. I closed out the terminal and then I just opened it up again and I don't know.
Anyone else need help? We feeling like everything's making sense. This is your class to say, nope, not making sense. Pump the brakes. Send me a chat, send Mel a chat, come off mute, scream bloody murder. We are nearing the end of React. So if it's not making sense now, now's the time to ask questions. Sequota.
I just have one question. Is it a problem if, like, for instance, like set post and yours is blue but mine's is yellow? Does that matter?
Yeah, so in your home.js,
Mhm.
make sure that you've got this use effect in here, and this use effect is calling set posts, and that set post is what should be making it yellow. But the live share colors don't match up, so you'll probably notice the colors on my screen share look like the colors on yours. That's what matters more.
Okay.
So the
Right.
live share sometimes doesn't pull the colors through. It's really annoying, and it's nothing that I can fix.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so this is a very common problem that we run into. A weekend has gone by. We have cried blood, sweat, and tears into our React code. We have put it out of our head for 3 days, and we're coming back into this, and it's like, where did I leave off? Very common thing, happens to me every day at the beginning of work. So sometimes we think of our future selves and leave ourselves little comments like, this is the file I was in last, or this is what I was working on and couldn't get done, or this is what I should do next. But because our future selves or our past selves were not thinking of our future selves, we got to figure that out on our own. So I'm looking at this and we're going to do a quick little review here. We start up at the app.js. The app.js is importing this thing called from React Router DOM, it's calling this create browser router. This create browser router is letting us have a home page, a new post page, and this read. And we've got this weird syntax going on with this colon timestamp. Haven't seen that before. We're not really using that anywhere else. This is a clue as to where we left off. Okay, what's this router doing though? It is saying, hey, on the home page, show this home component. Okay, well, how does this home component work? I'm going to command click on it, and it's going to bring me to my home page. And so the first thing I do is I look up here at the top, and I'm going, all right, here are my posts in my set posts. Why do I have this coming from state? This is coming from state because whenever I update this, I would like the HTML that's shown to the user to automatically update. And we're keeping track of this array, because it's a square brace, of objects. Every time we have a post, we get a new object. That object has key value pairs. The key is title, content, timestamp, and author. The values are the content that go inside of there. All three of the four happen to be a string. This one happens to be a date timestamp. Okay, what happens then? Well, we have this use effect. And we know this use effect is going to run when the component first loads. So whenever this component updates, when there are new posts that come in, when anything changes on this, this code is not going to rerun because we have this curly brace down here. I'm sorry, this empty array down here. Whenever you get an error message about infinite re-renders or too many re-renders, or your page seems like it's in a loop or is updating, always check your use effects to make sure you've got this empty array down here. That array is called a dependency array, and it's basically saying, hey, whenever any of these variables change in this array, go rerun the effect of this code. Go rerun this function. The reason why we leave this empty is it's saying only run this when the first thing runs, but because there are no other dependencies, it won't rerun that code. Well, why do we need that empty array in the first place? Well, if we leave that empty array out and we just have that first parameter, that use effect is going to rerun whenever that component updates. Well, in this case, we are calling set posts. Set posts causes that component to update to show the new posts. Well, now we just got ourselves stuck in an infinite loop. So if you ever see the error message, don't follow me, just showing you what the error message is. You see this maximum update exceeded, and this number keeps on ticking up and up and up. What's happening here? This use effect is running. It is setting the posts. The setting the post is making this return go rerun. Because this return is going to update, it's going to go run our use effect again. Our use effect is going to set the posts, and we're calling an infinite loop. So always make sure you've got that empty array as a second component, which is basically just saying, hey, only show this, only go run this effect when the component is first showing up, when it's mounting, when it's first rendering. Okay. What's the use effect doing? What we're doing is we're saying go to window, go to local storage, go get the item called posts. Once we get that out of local storage, that is JSON. Even though JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation, JSON itself is a string. So we can't work with an object, we can't work with the array, we can't do any of that because it's a string. So we do the opposite of stringify. We take that object and that string and we parse it out into an object or an array. Once we get that array, we want to show that to the end user. Well, with vanilla JavaScript, we'd have to do inner HTML. We'd have to generate the HTML in the JavaScript. It gets messy. But with React, we are able to take that data right here and set it into our state. So our state updates here. Posts now has the information from local storage. We come down and we go, okay, if there are not any posts, show the message that there are no posts yet. But if there are posts, map through them. What is map doing? Map is a type of a loop, just like a for loop is. It is generating out and giving us access to each post. Each post is returning out a component called post. Whenever we map, we have to put a key on that post to make React happy. And we are passing in the data, each post, into a prop called data. Where does that data flow to? If we go to our post component, post.js, we get access to the data right here. Now, why do we have this in a separate file? Theoretically, we could actually take this entire div, copy it, and paste it right in here. We don't do that, though, because this is already enough code. We've got a component that's repeating itself. We could put it right in here, but we want to start breaking our files out into separate components, separate files, so that they're easier to maintain. Now, instead of having to find this giant hunk of a post, I'm able to go to post.js here and update that information directly. Looking back at our home.js, do we have any questions about how that's working, the order that it's running, any of that kind of stuff? Plush.
I do not understand use effect whatsoever.
Okay, so okay, let me think about this. I'm gonna comment this out for now. Let's say I throw an input in here, and it is a type of text, and we want to link it up to state because we want to say, hey, when we're typing in letters, we want to be able to pull out that value. So I'm going to say const input and set input equals a uState. That's an empty string. Don't follow me. Sorry, should have clarified that. Just an example here. So I say, all right, the value is input, and the onChange is taking the event and setting the input to the event target value. Okay, so I come over here. I have my new input up here. I type ABC and everything looks fine, right? Well, I can now come over here, and because this onChange is setting the input, this return is going to rerun and update the value based off of this set coming from the state. So I can console log out my input, and that means that when I type in A, I see the letter A. And when I type in B, I see A, B. And when I type C, I see C. Why? Because this return is rerunning every time this input gets updated. Okay, makes sense. Well, now I want to say, hey, when the page loads, go to local storage, get the items out, parse it, and set it into posts. So I'm going to go ahead and comment that back in. Now I refresh this page and it says I've got too many re-renders going on. Well, why is it re-rendering? The page first loads, it pulls the item out of posts, everything is fine. It parses everything out, everything is fine. And then it goes to take those parsed out posts and set it into state. So the set state causes this home to re-render, and it goes, oh, I'm re-rendering. Go get the item out of post, go parse it. Now that we've parsed it, go set it into state. Oh, I'm setting into state. I need to go rerun this entire function to go refresh that state update. So because of that, we're caught in a loop, right? We're saying, hey, anytime you go in here, go update the state. Well, updating the state causes a re-render to happen. The re-render is reading the information, updating the state, and now we're caught in a loop. So the way that we break that is we put it in a use effect. This use effect is saying only run when the component first mounts. So now what happens is it comes through and it goes, okay, post is going to be this stuff here. We're going to run this in a second, come down here, show that there are no posts yet. Now that the component has loaded, we have to go deal with this use effect. This use effect is only going to run after the component shows up for the first time because this is an empty array. So we come in here, we get the item out, we parse it, we set it into state. That causes this use state to get updated. This comes down to the use effect and it goes, no, this component has already been shown for the first time. We aren't going to rerun this because this is an empty array. Because of that, we come down here, go rerun the return with that post information.
Gotcha. So how do we associate that use effect down at the set input event target value, line number 32, around there?
This input, I actually kind of went down a wrong path to explain that.
No.
This input has nothing to do with this use effect. So
Okay.
you would still have that same problem even without this input. Even if I comment this out and take the use effect back out, you run into that same issue, too many re-renders, because this use effect is updating state.
But typically, like, how would you say, like, explain it in layman terms? Like, when do we use effect? When it's like, when is it like re-rendering over and over? Like,
Whenever whenever what you're trying to do is updating state.
Okay.
Whenever you update state, it causes a re-render. But we want to be able to update state because we need to be able to get our data from an API or from local storage and get it into our state. Well, how do we get it into our state if every time we update the state, it causes a re-render? So the use effect is basically the way of saying, well, I want to be able to update state, but I also want to be able to say only do this when the component first loads or when it right after it first loads. And that's what the use effect is for.
Gotcha. It's much more clear now. Thank you.
Cool. Let me try and put this back to the way it was. The reason why I was showing this example is because every time this input gets updated, it's going to cause another re-render, which would hypothetically cause this local storage and parse to rerun every time we type a letter. So the use effect is doing two things. One, it's breaking us out of the infinite loop. And two, it's saying, hey, we don't need to get it from local storage and parse it every time state gets updated. We only need to do that when the component first loads.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. So after all of that review, I still have no clue where I left off. Well, we got new posts working. And if I go back to my new post, I'm looking at this and I'm like, all right, I've got my inputs and I've got a form on submit. On submit's a little different in React, but kind of makes sense, right? We link it to this on submit up here, this create post. This create post has a ton of code in it, but we aren't panicking because if we go look at our new post.js, all of this code from our JavaScript was able to come over directly and be used here. The only exception to this, and if we had more time, we would dive into it, is you have to choose, do I want a controlled input or an uncontrolled input? If I needed a controlled input here, and I didn't want to use that uncontrolled event target elements title value, I would have to set up state for each and every input in my form. If I needed to be able to clear out that form or have more control over it, I would need to wire that up to state, making it a controlled input. But in this case, I don't. I take all of that information, I dump it into local storage. I go back to my home page. My home page is pulling that out of local storage. It's setting it as a state. We're mapping over everything. I go back to my home page. I know all of that is working. So I'm feeling good about all of that. I hit read more and I get post goes here. I'm like, don't want that. I want the post details, all of this information to show up here. That's where we left off. That's where we're going to dive in tonight. So I am headed to my new post. Nope, I am headed to my read.js. And my read.js only has this post goes here. That's what I want to be working with. So I'm looking at this page and I'm looking at this and I'm like, read more. What's read more supposed to do? It's supposed to show the information from this page. All right. Well, if I go over and I look at my read.js in my day 3, I'm looking at this code and I'm saying, okay, what's the first thing we do? We go get the items out of local storage. But we only want to do that when the component first loads. Because of that, we need our use effect. So I'm going to copy the first 2 lines of code. I'm going to go back over and I'm going to say use effect. Make sure if you are using autocomplete that this import came in. If the import didn't come in, you have to type that in manually. Now you can start following me if I did not make that clear enough. Okay, in our use effect, always 2 things we need in our use effect. First is the function that is going to run. And second are these empty array as the second parameter. That empty array second parameter, super important. It's saying only when the component first loads. And I'm going to drop in what I copied and pasted from my local storage and my parse. Local storage does not change at all. React is, at the end of the day, compiling down to vanilla JavaScript. That means we can take our JavaScript and go from there. So I'm going to say get and parse posts from local storage. And to test that this is working, I'm going to console log out my posts. So I come over here, I click my read more button, make sure that I am on the right page. And down in my browser or my console, I see my post object.
Max, can you explain one more time why we have the straight braces, brackets, whatever those things? Yeah.
This right here is saying only run this code when the component first loads.
Yep.
So we would put a variable in here if we wanted to run this code when a particular variable in state updated, but that is, I don't want to say extremely rare, but it is less common. So if we don't put those, if we don't put that array in at all, that use effect is going to run every single time the component updates. If we put an empty array in, it's going to say only update when the component has first loaded, when it first shows up. And then if we put a variable in there, it's going to say whenever that state variable updates, I want this use effect to go rerun. And it ends the infinite loop. Yes, Natasha, you're right. Which at this point, we don't have an infinite loop because we're not updating anything in state, but we will be, so we will need that empty array. Flush.
So in the console, it console logs like twice. Like, was it doing
Yeah.
it?
You don't need to worry about that for now. That only happens on local. There's basically a you know, that error message that we get that's like, hey, this is infinitely re-rendering. You don't get that error message on prod. So basically what's happening under the hood with React is on local, it's like testing the code first, which is the first console log you see, and then it's actually running it so that you can see it the second time. So when you are debugging things on local, oftentimes you'll get that twice. That is okay. When you send it up to production, it would only be there once.
Got it. Thank you.
Jen, there is never a time that I have not wanted that array there. There are times that I've put things in that array. There are more times than I care to admit that I have forgotten to put that array and sent a production bug and had people panicking and going, my screen keeps refreshing and I can't stop it. Please help me. And the first thing I do is go back and look at my use effect and go, motherfucker, I forgot to put that array in there. So it is safe to say I really don't like the syntax of that. I really wish React had come up with a better way of saying, oh, if you want this code to run every time the component updates, put the word true in there, or put a warning in there that says you forgot your dependency array, but React doesn't do that for us. So it is safe to say, whenever you do your use effect, put this array in here, unless for some reason you very intentionally want that effect to run whenever the component updates. Which I guess there are use cases for, but it's 1 in 100 that you would want to do that. And the other 99 times you would either want to put something in that array or have the array be empty. Amberlynn, sometimes it's due to a filter that you have set. Up here, if you hit default levels, make sure info warnings and errors are checked. If that doesn't fix your problem, let me know and you can share your screen.
I need to share my screen.
Yep, go for it. Yep, oh, that looks good. Oh, click the read more button. You're just on the wrong page. We put the console log in the read page, and because of that, that's why they aren't showing.
Thank you.
No problem. I made the same mistake. I was like, where are they? And then I realized I had to click the button. Anyone else need help? Okay. So we now have our posts and they're down here. And we've got postcodes here. What's the next step to bridge this gap? We don't need props, Palash. Why? We don't need props because all of the information we already have access to in this component. So we don't need to take that and send it down from the parent to the child because we already have the data from local storage, which is already kind of global. We don't need a new post either, Jen, because we already have posts on our homepage. So when I hit the read more button, I want to use state. And I want to use state to take the posts here and make that post show up down here. So I'm going to say const post and set post is a use state that starts out empty. And I get an error message that use state is not defined. That's because I didn't use my autocomplete. So I need to come up here and throw my use state into my import. So it's here. So I then am looking at my posts and I'm looking over here and I've got all of my posts here, but I don't want all of my posts. what post do I want? I want the specific post that I clicked this read more button on. I only want to see the second post, but I have all of these posts here. How am I going to match the posts in the array with the posts over here? Well, we already have the answer to that. We use the timestamp, but this is using a clunky URL. We actually have access to the URL somewhere. Where do we have access to the URL? Well, up at app.js, we put this timestamp thing in here. So wouldn't it be nice if we could hook our ways into the React router functionality? Well, we can do that. We can say, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we got access to the params in our React router using a hook? Oh, isn't that convenient? There's a little documentation here. Totally not because your instructor couldn't do that from memory and needed something to reference. Okay, all right, what do we have to do? Well, we've already done this route stuff, and we already have this colon in there. So what do we need to do? We need to use this use params. So how do we do that? We come over here and we're going to import use params from React router DOM. Then we get access to whatever we called that parameter. Well, what did we call that parameter? We did a colon and then we said timestamp. So we need to match that here. We need to say const timestamp equals use params. And to make sure that's working, I'm going to console log out my timestamp. I save, I come over, and now whatever timestamp I have in my URL, note your number will not match my number. That is totally okay. We all created posts at different times. Now I've got that in my console, but I don't want to stop there. I actually want to go back to the home page, clear out my console, and click on the other post and make sure I get the correct timestamp there. Because I'm getting the right timestamp on both of them, that means I can now do the work of using this timestamp to match it to the item in my array. So now we've seen 3 different hooks. Use effect, only run this code when the component first shows up. Use state, hey, whenever I set this state, go rerun this component to update the new information in it. And now, for the first time, we've seen use params. So it is another hook. We know it's a hook because it starts with the word use. We're pulling this in from React router, and now we're using params to get out the information from the parameter of the URL. Well, how does the router know that that number is a parameter and not actually just part of the URL text? Because we put the colon in front of it. So because this timestamp is marked as a parameter by using the colon in the URL, we are able to pull out that timestamp here.
So it's like that query string that we had to.
It is just like the query string, except instead of having to do a question mark and then that key value syntax, we're able to flag it as a parameter by using that colon instead.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You just have a light bulb moment, Jen? Do you want to share with the class?
He did it. It's just like the money sign and the curly braces that's it.
Yeah, so it's the question in the URL, it would be question mark and then the key value.
Mhm.
Those are called URL parameters, but there are multiple types of URL parameters. So we used query parameters, which is the question mark and whatever comes after it. We are now using what we call route parameters. Why is it called a route parameter? Because it's literally part of the path for the route. But they accomplish the same thing. This is just a little a little less messy on the syntax because we get access to the router directly. Okay. Good news is we are over the hump for the hard part of this feature. What we have done is we already have code that uses and finds the matching post for us. The only difference, I went over here and I copied the short version that I had from my read.js, but we are still using search post and using the timestamp. The only difference is instead of calling it date ID, we called it timestamp in our new code. Now we take that matching post and we want to show that data to the end user. Because we want to show that data to the end user, we are going to set our post from our state into our matching post down here. And because we have set that into state, we should be able to just throw in our post.title right here. I come over, I refresh, and now I've got this error message. Give you a second to catch up on this code before we get into the error message. Noting here, you should have an error message if you refresh the page. Date ID, we change to timestamp right here, and that fixes that error.
Actually, I am getting like the yellow that says the one warning. Am I supposed to be getting that? Because
Yes, that is fine. Oh, no, you shouldn't be. What's the warning say? Is post not used?
yep.
Yeah, if throw in your post.title down here and that will fix that warning.
Okay, thank you. It's also
Oh, oh, go ahead.
it's also saying something about the Corbin put it in. I'm getting that too.
Corwin, it's a liar. Only wants 2 equals in there. That is intentional. And I'll touch on that in a second. Let's fix this error first. Does anyone not have working? Well, I guess everyone should not have working code at this point. So let's fix that error message. Over here, we get cannot read properties undefined reading title. This is an annoying but very powerful feature of React, and one that it's like we definitely want to make sure we understand the concept. And this goes back to what Palash was commenting on of React being harder. Sometimes React is harder because it doesn't run linearly. Let's talk about the order that this is running. We come over to our code. Our code goes use state, set up, great. I know you're going to put a post in there eventually. Use params, great. Go to the URL, pull out the timestamp. I have access to that. Now console log out the timestamp. Don't actually need to do this because we tested it's working. I'm going to comment that out for now. Now it comes down and it says use effect. Use effect is like async. It runs in the background. So it goes, I'm not going to run this yet. Skip over this giant hunk of code. Now come down, show this return. This return is going to go to post, which is up here, and it's trying to access a property called title. Well, what's in our post? If I console log out our post right now, you don't have to do this, and I scroll up above my error message, you will see my post is undefined. Well, I can't access title of a post that doesn't exist. Well, why would React do that to us? Why can't we just do this use effect and say, wait until this use effect is done before you show any of this information? Well, you actually are doing that on purpose. The reason why React does this is oftentimes when we do a use effect and we're loading up the data from the state, it has to go make an API call. That API call could take 5 or 10 seconds to run. Because of that, we want to be able to show something to the end user that says, hey, this information is loading in. So the reason why React always runs this use effect kind of asynchronously, the reason why it doesn't run that use effect until after the first time the component shows up is because we want to be able to show a loading message to the user. So what we're going to do to pull that off is we're going to come down here. Jen, we can't quite use await because React is controlling the order that that code is running. So basically that use effect doesn't run until after the first time the first return shows up. So what we do instead is we say, look, if there isn't something in the post, if we haven't loaded that data from state yet, return an H1 that says, hold your horses. We'll get fancy. Okay, so now what's happening? First time the component loads, we set up our state, we pull our information out of parameters, we say this use effect is only going to run after the first time the first return shows. We come down here, we say if there is not a post, well, there isn't a post. We started our state out as empty. Because of that, we're going to return out this H1. We think the computer is done, but really it goes, whoa, I showed the component for the first time. Because this is an empty array, I'm going to go to local storage, parse the data out, find the matching post based off of the timestamp from the URL, and take that matching post and set it in to our state. Wait a second, our state is now updating. We called set post. So post is now going to have the data from the matching post. So it comes back through, it goes and it reruns this if statement. This if statement is saying, well, there is a post, skip over this H1, come down here, show this H1 with the post title. Now, when I come over here, I still have an error message. That's okay. Refresh your page and you should have the title of your post showing up. If someone's code is not broken at this point, I'm calling you out on not following with me. There's got to be someone who has a problem.
Max, I have a
Yes.
lot of problems with my code.
Thank you. Just makes me assured that, you know, people are following along. Go ahead, share your screen.
I'm on the right.
Timestamp. Matching post, set post, post title. Okay, are you actually having a problem, or do you think you're having a problem because there's a lot of yellow in the console?
Well, there's all the yellow down there, and over on my page, can you see this side?
Yes, just
Okay.
refresh that page. Okay, so you're still having an issue. Go back to your code. We added between on line 21, if there is not a post, return out an H1 that says loading. Yep, Jen, you hit the nail on the head.
How do I put the X?
That's fine, yeah. Or just put in the word loading or whatever. That's fine.
Okay.
Save. And refresh. Back in
Okay.
business.
Okay. Thank you.
Palash, what's up?
My title is not showing, it just shows the hold on message, the loading message.
Share your screen.
This is the one.
Well, I don't love that. My guess is that might be a bad guess. So I'm looking up in your URL and you see this %7D.
Mhm.
That to me says the problem isn't on this page. The problem is actually on whatever page generated this link. That is probably on our home page. And in our home page, we render out the post. So we go to the post, and this post has your data timestamp with an extra curly brace.
Okay,
So if I take that out, problem isn't fixed yet because I have to go back. And then if I click on that link, it brings me to the right spot.
awesome. Thank you.
Hopefully you guys follow that debugging process, because that's now becoming more and more important, right? It's not just Max fix my code. It's Max, how are you fixing my code? What steps are you going through? And don't be afraid at this point. You've earned the right. You have survived this long to say, yeah, but how did you know how to do that? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Don't be afraid to ask me, how did you figure that out? Amberlynn.
Mine says post is not defined.
It's a liar, but share a
No.
screen, share a screen. Jen, I didn't actually see the extra curly. My thought process was, where are we getting that information, right? The timestamp, we're getting it from the URL. So I'm going to look at the URL, and the timestamp was all numbers. So when I saw the %7D, I was like, no, there's something wrong there. Where do we generate that URL? We do it in the read more button of the post. So that's the only way I knew to do that. I would have been there for hours if I was just reading the code letter for letter looking for it. But what I was specifically looking for was, let's break this process down. It goes from local storage on the home page to the post component, to the read more button, to the read page, to the timestamp, to the data, to the state. And so that's what I was breaking down that process and going, okay, where is it breaking in that 7-step process? Your matching post lines 8 through 10 are supposed to be on line what is now 17. 15 now.
15 here. Oh. Okay,
Yep, you're good to go.
thank you.
No problem. Who else needs help? The other answer to that, Jen, is just years of experience, by the way. How did I see the extra curly? Unfortunately, it's been busting my head against the keyboard for 4 hours going, why isn't this working? It should all be working. And then some other developer looking at my code and going, you idiot. It happens less and less when you get to that senior level, but developers on my team will attest that I too am human and have made those mistakes and have just gotten up and had to walk away from the computer because otherwise the Mac would have become a Windows after being thrown out one.
Super quick question.
Yes.
In all of the files under the source, what are the M's and the U's next to them?
Oh, that is we haven't seen that before because, well, before React, because we didn't have a repository set up. So you'll notice that if you have if you open up like your portfolio website, you'll still have those M's and those U's next to them. What they are saying is I don't know why I don't have them on mine, but that is Create React app is creating a Git repository for you automatically, and the M means the file was modified, and the U means you don't really know what the U stands for. You might be untracked, meaning that Git isn't tracking the changes in that file, or uncommitted, one of those two. Unchanged, I don't think so, because M is for modified, so they wouldn't do like the reverse of an M. But the general answer to your question is it has to do with Git, and it's just showing you what files that you've changed over time. Mo, debugging is a skill, not a talent. So it just takes years and years of getting better at it. And 90% of all software developers work on a team. So there are times where you're debugging and you really just cannot figure it out. And you'll have to go to a senior developer and they'll kind of help you dig into your code and find the problem. But remember that debugging is a journey, and you just have to go follow step by step through it sometimes. Sometimes you go, oh, I think the problem's in here. And because you're writing the code and testing small chunks of it, you can find it immediately. Sometimes you got to start at the beginning and just start pulling the thread until you get to the problem. And other times I've actually worked on production bug issues where someone has started at the beginning of the bug and worked their way through as a user. And I've started all the way back at the database and worked the way through as the computer. And it's really interesting who gets to the bug and finds the problem, the actual problem quickest. Practice, that's all it is. Practice, practice, practice. Okay. We got our post showing up. Let's finish this sucker out before we go on break. So I'm gonna head back to my read.js, and I've got all of this HTML here that's doing all of this heavy lifting for me. So I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna copy the whole thing. I am going to head back over to my blog, and where do I want this to go? Well, this is showing information from the data. So I'm going to paste that down in my return. I need to take out all of my $signs because I don't need the template literal anymore. And I need to change my matching post. My matching post, I only have access to in my use effect. What do I have access to outside of my use effect? My post. My post is hanging out all the way out here. So I have access to that variable in scope. So I need to change all of my matching posts to post. I do that, I come over, I should see all of my content here. Anyone not get their entire post to show up? No, I did not type that code that quickly. I went over to the read.js, I grabbed this, and I made it show up over here. Good. All right. I'm also noticing over here, I've got this delete post function. And I'm like, all right, this is cool, but where's the delete button? How do I make that show up at all? Well, it isn't in my JavaScript. It's actually hanging out over in my read.html. So we got to keep in mind here that our JavaScript in vanilla JavaScript doesn't have all the information we're looking for in it. If we were dynamically generating the content in the JavaScript, it may have some of the HTML we're looking for, but over here, there's this entire other delete post button that I'm looking for. So I'm going to copy both this A tag and the button. I'm going to come over and I'm going to paste that underneath my title and content and all of that. But we've got a couple things we've got to clean up here. Because I'm taking vanilla HTML and putting it in my JSX, I got to clean a couple things up. One, my class becomes a class name. Two, I brought over an A tag. And A tags are fine in React code only if they're linking to an external site. This isn't linking to an external site. This is linking to my home page. So I need to change both of these A tags to a link tag. I need to change my href to 2. And I don't really have an index.html now, do I? Because we're in React, I need to change that to a slash. I save that, and now I get yelled at, link is not defined. Link comes in from React Router DOM. Because I already have one import, use params from that, I can also throw in that link there. And finally, it's yelling at me because I've got an on click, but it knows that this is vanilla JavaScript because I don't have a capital C. So I need to put the capital C in. I'm going to put my curly braces in instead. So it's linked to a variable, and that variable is going to come from my read.js. So I'm going to take this entire const delete post, and I'm going to drop that sucker in above my if statement. Oh, and one other change, it's using date ID here. It needs to use timestamp instead. Okay, so quick overview of those changes. I changed my A tag to a link. I changed my href to a 2. I changed my index.html to that empty slash. I imported my link up here at the top from my React Router DOM. I changed my class to a class name. I changed my onClick to a capital C. I changed it from a string to those curly braces. I put in the word delete post, And finally, I came over, I copied my delete post, I pasted that whole sucker above my if statement, and I changed my date ID here to timestamp. And if everything works, I should be able to hit my delete post button, hit OK, and be taken back to the home page with that post deleted, which is really kind of cool, right? We took all of this code that we literally wrote a month and a half ago, and we're able to reuse that. That's the power of JavaScript. Oftentimes when we're working in the front end, our front end language and our back end language don't match. But with React and vanilla JavaScript, we can use that same language and all that same syntax, and we'll be able to do that as well in our back end because we're learning Node next. Okay, after the break, we are going to learn a little bit about individual page styling, and we are going to get sassy. That will make more sense after the break. We are also going to learn about structures and outlets and how we can get our page set up so we don't need to reuse components on that same page. And then from there, I think we'll open it up to any features that you want to see implemented, and we can try and tackle them and get them working in React. Go on break, be back at 7:25, and I will stick around in case anyone has questions.
I got a question.
Oh, we probably still have warnings in the terminal, Jen. We'll clean those up after break too.
Okay, is it the link not defined?
Oh no, link not defined you can fix. Up
did I
at
do
the
it?
top with the import after the use params, throw in your link.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Yay.
Yep.
I'm still having errors.
Okay. Give me 1 second.
I may have
What did I
phone.
just say? Outlet, SAS for individual page styling, any warnings left in the console? I think I said a third thing. Okay, doesn't matter. Go to share screen.
Mm,
It's probably because you have an extra curly somewhere. This curly is matching this curly here. So you just missed a closing curly here. Did that fix it?
oh wait. No, it's still maybe I need to just yep, it's fine now.
Cool. No problem. And Berlin, go for it.
Mine's having an import export problem.
You might be missing the same curly that Sequoia's missing, but go ahead, share screen.
The end one, the one
Uh,
at the bottom.
No, it was one right after delete post. But you can share your screen, we can take a look.
Okay. Let me find delete post. Okay. Oh, okay.
Yep, that was it.
no.
You need one more as well. And now just change line 26. It says date ID. Change that to timestamp.
Okay.
And you should be back in business.
So close.
There you go.
Okay.
And then you're missing a couple lines of code to make the delete button actually work, but everything else you've got in there.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. All right. Couple things to finish up here, and then we will open the floor to concepts that you guys would like to see or features to see how I would go about adding them or anything like that. So let's start with our warnings. So my terminal I've had hidden down here. We've got a couple warnings down here that these our warnings are exactly what they say they are, right? Errors are, hey, we need to be concerned. We need to fix this. Our code's not going to work until we do. A warning is more of a heads up. I don't know if you meant to do this, but you did do it, and I don't love that you did it. So let's look through what our warnings are. It looks like we only have 2 of them. One is saying up here, expected triple equals and sol double equals. In general, in our JavaScript, we almost always want to use a triple equals. Does anyone remember the difference between a double equals and a triple equals? The double equal is just comparing values. The triple equals compares the values and the type. Thank you, smartass Jen. No, so the double equals is saying, hey, if we are comparing, let me pull this down. If I say if 1 equals the string 1, console log something down here. I'm not showing my screen. This is true. Why is this true? Because it's comparing the number 1 to whatever the value is in the string. And if those are true, if these 2 match, that will log out. But oftentimes we don't want that to be the case. What we want to do is we want to say, does 1 triple equal 1? This is false. This is true. Well, that doesn't really seem like a big deal, but what we end up running into is we say if 0 is equal to false, this, believe it or not, is true. Well, that's not really what we want to happen. When we're looking at this, we're going to say 0 and false, and we're like 0 and false, those aren't the same thing. Well, 0 is considered a falsy value. So this is actually true. For that reason, we almost always want to be comparing not only the values, but also the types. If we change this to a triple equals, this becomes false, which is what we would expect. A number doesn't ever triple equal a different data type. So what it is telling us here is, hey, you used a double equal. We don't really like using double equals. We want to use a triple equals there. Well, that was actually intentional because timestamp, when it comes in through a param, is always going to be a string. But our timestamp over here isn't actually a string, it's a number. And so here we intentionally said, no, we want to compare the string coming from the URL to the number coming from the data. We can fix this by converting one or the other to a number. The easiest way to do that is to come over here and say, hey, parse this timestamp out as a number and then compare the two data types. If I save that, parsing, remember, is converting. We parse JSON, we can parse a string into an integer. And if I hit my read more button, my page still works. But now, if I head back to my terminal, you will see we are down one error message. So we fixed one error message with a double instead of a triple. Corwin, you can if you want. These are all getting rid of the warnings, but they shouldn't impact the functionality. So as long as you're kind of understanding as we're going through it, you don't need to be, well, you can follow along if you want, or you don't have to.
So what do we change there to get rid of that one?
We add in another equal, and then we put the timestamp in a parse int. Now got another error. It says React hook use effect is missing a dependency. Well, what does that mean? That means up here, we are using this timestamp. Well, this use effect, we told it to run when the page first loads. The problem that we run into is if I go grab I go grab another post timestamp. If I copy that, paste it in here and hit enter. Oh, that shouldn't have worked. Never mind. What it is warning us, I tried, is if theoretically this timestamp changes, this use effect won't rerun. And we actually want that to be the case. We want this use effect to go get the post out of storage, not only when the component first loads, but also if this timestamp up here ever changes. And so what it's saying is, hey, you said that this should only load, this only dependency is when it loads the first time, but really this use effect should be running whenever that timestamp changes as a param. So we can fix that error by throwing the timestamp into this array. That is now saying, hey, run this not only when the timestamp first loads in, when the component first loads in, but if that timestamp ever changes. And then the last one is down on line 28. And for this one, we've got the same problem. When we're going through the array, this is all a number. But when we're looking at our timestamp here, this is a string. So we can fix it the same way by throwing in another equal and parsing out our timestamp as an integer. Similar explanation. This is a number. This is a string. By parsing it, we convert that to a number. And then we are checking for equality, not only based off of the value, but also on the data type. Does anyone else have warnings that they would like help getting rid of? Oftentimes we will do what we just did. We'll go through, we'll do all of our development. We'll think everything's working. And then we'll look in our terminal and go, oh crap, I got to go fix those. So those warnings, plus you could use a number instead of a parsant. That would work as well. Those warnings are sometimes things where it's like, well, it's not causing a bug now, but it might down the road, or React is trying to look out for you, trying to be helpful. Corwin, we can fix the delete button next. Last call for warnings. Anyone needs help? Okay. Let me see. Okay, So I'm looking at my delete post button and I'm like, that needs some space between the return to home and the link. So I'm going to head to my app.css and I'm going to go down to the button and I'm looking at, actually, you know what we'll do? We'll do this. I'm going to make a new file. I'm going to call that read.css. Make sure when you create that new file, you're right clicking on SRC and doing new file, not new folder, new file. And that read.css is going to be inside my SRC folder. So I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to target my BTN and I am going to add some margin on the left of that of 20 pixels. I save, I come over, and my delete post hasn't moved at all. Well, just like our HTML, we have to use that CSS. We got to link that CSS in. So if I come back to my read.js, we do it a little differently. Instead of that link href, we are able to import our read.css. Now, we don't need the keyword from, and we don't need any of this because we're not pulling variables out. We're not using things that are imported there. We're saying just take that whole CSS file and import it in for me. So I import that and I come over and now I've got a little space between my return to home and my delete post. New file, read.css. I target my BTN. I've got my button, my margin left 20 pixels. I go back to my read.js and I put that import up at the top. And that causes my gap. So I'm feeling pretty good about this. I've got it on my read component. I've only got one button on this, the BTN down here. I'm cool targeting that directly. I hit return to home, and all of a sudden my read more buttons have a margin left of 20 pixels on them. And I'm like, but why? Well, it turns out that even though we are importing only on this read.css component, this CSS, even though it's only on that read component, is applied globally. That means that even though I'm trying to scope my BTN only to this component, it's getting applied everywhere. That's really annoying. So we have a couple fixes for that. What I like to do is I like to go down to this div and put an ID on this. And I name this ID whatever our component is. So I throw an ID of read on there. And then in my read.css, I can say, hey, go apply that button styling only to things inside read. So I come over here. Now my buttons are back to normal, but if I hit read more, I still have the gap here. So two things I do to fix that. I throw an ID of read up on that parent div, and then in my read.css, I throw that on here. All right, well, that's cool, but that would be really annoying. Paul's following me just for 1 second. That means, don't follow, that if I wanted to target the H2 and the H5, every time I go to target something, I have to say read H2 is going to be a color of pink. And then the read of H5 is going to be a color of red, right? Well, that works. That's going to make sure that the styling only applies to things on that page. But this is DRY. Don't repeat yourself. We're breaking that rule, right? There should be some easier way. And wait a second, with curly braces, we should be able to just throw curlies in here and then throw all of this in here, right? That makes sense to me. Unfortunately, this is not valid CSS. We can't use curly braces and put selectors inside of them. So we get sassy. What is sass? Sass is syntactically, oh, it said it on the homepage and got rid of it. Syntactically awesome style sheets. Sass gives CSS an upgrade. So just like we take our React code and eventually compile it down into vanilla JavaScript, Sass unlocks some features of CSS that allows us to use this syntax. So we get access to things like variables and easier calculations and all kinds of cool stuff in Sass. Hands down, what I think the best feature of Sass is that this is valid syntax. So why don't we teach this earlier? Well, one, it's important to know CSS and get all the properties and understand that. Two, Sass is kind of a pain to get working because you need what is called a compiler. That is taking this Sass syntax and compiling it down to something the browser can understand. Well, wait a second. React is already doing some compiling for us. That means we can hook into what already is working with React. So I'm going to go down into the terminal. I'm going to hit Control-C. Now you can follow along with me. Control-C. I am going to npm install Sass, S-A-S-S, and hit enter on that. And that'll take a minute. And now, because we hit Control-C, we have to restart our server. So we're going to say npm start again to fire that up. Control-C to stop it, npm install Sass, enter, npm start when the install is done. Now that we've got Sass installed, we've got to do two things. One, I'm going to right click on my my read.css and rename it to read.scss. Turns out Sass has two syntaxes. SASS isn't used a ton. SCSS is used. Control-C to stop. npm install Sass, enter, npm start, and then rename your read.css to read.scss. Now that we have renamed that, we have to do one final step and then we're done. I head back to my read.js and I rename that to read.scss. Because I have, you will now notice my styling is back and I'm able to use that much cooler syntax of being able to nest selectors. All of that solves the problem of, hey, I just made my read.css. I only want my read CSS to apply to my read component. So we solve that by going to read.js, by throwing an ID on the read div. We install npm install Sass. We restart our server. We create our read.scss file. And we are now allowed to nest our CSS like this. I'm going to comment this out for now. Sass is very widely used. Like jQuery, it is shrinking in the number of people that use it because CSS natively supports a lot of the features that Sass did years back. That CSS hadn't caught up to. However, Sass is still very widely used, and there is an entire rabbit hole that you can go down of learning additional Sass features and learning about variables and calculations and utilities and functions and all kinds of stuff that are built into Sass. I'm going to leave it here of just being able to nest those selectors But hopefully that might open the door. If you are a huge CSS lover, Sass could be the next thing for you to dive into and learn more about. Cool. Anyone need a step repeated? Anyone not get the concept? All right. Got one more thing for you tonight, and then we will open the floor to any questions, any React concepts, anything that we would like to review. So I head back to my homepage, and my homepage has this nice Max's blog. And I noticed that if I pull this all the way out, I have my nice container going on, right? If I go to read more, my read more doesn't have a container. And I could go to every single page and put a div class container on that, but that would kind of be a pain and breaking DRY. And I kind of want my Max's blog to show up on every page. So wouldn't it be cool if the thing controlling all of the routing could control what components also show up on the page every single time? Let's dive into that a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over and I'm going to make a new file. Make sure it is in your SRC folder called layout.js. And layout's going to be just another component that's going to return a div. And we're going to export the default layout so we can use it. Then I'm going to do this cool thing. I'm going to import this thing called outlet. And I'm going to use that outlet between my divs. What is an outlet for? It's just creating a hole that we can put something in, right? Outlet for our feelings, or outlet for hating React, or outlet for loving JavaScript. Whatever it is, that's our outlet. That's where we're going to put stuff. Well, we can take advantage of this outlet by going all the way up to our app.js and putting all of our routes in this component. Stand by. Thought I knew what I was doing and I don't. Okay, we are going to make this new object, and the path is going to be any page, and the component we're going to use, the element we're going to use is our layout that we just created. Make sure your autocomplete throws that import up there. And then we are going to say the children of this layout is an array. And we're going to take all three of these objects and put them inside the children. So take a look at my final code. What we basically did is we made this path, the element layout, to be the parent. Then these children are going to show up, whether it's new post, home, or read, they are going to show up in this outlet. So whatever path matches here, we're going to take this element and the router is going to take that element and shove it into the outlet for us. That means we can take something like on our homepage, this div container and the H1 and put it inside of our layout and have this container and H1 get applied to every page. Okay, breaking that down. My layout, we imported outlet, we made our layout component, we had it return a container and an H1, and then we put the outlet underneath it and closed all of that out. I then went to my home page and deleted out my container div, the closing div for the container, and the H1. Why did I do that? Because my layout page is going to show that H1 everywhere. I then modified my app.js to have the routes show up as children in the outlet of the layout. So let me see if I can get everything on the screen that I changed. Everything on my screen share is the final version of what we just did. And the final result should be that we see this Max's blog not only on the homepage, but also on the read more and also on the new post. You can move the HR if you want. Okay.
The little gray line, is it supposed to be on the read more page? Is it supposed to be under the timestamp?
Yes.
I'm missing one under the blog. What am I doing wrong?
Share your screen. You're probably just missing the HR.
I think I am. I think I took it out.
I mean, it
There.
doesn't really matter. If you don't want it there, then you don't have to get it back. The yeet for this week is not going to be good work turning your blog, everyone.
So it would be under the H1 in the layout, right?
There's an HR. I moved the HR from the homepage into the layout, but then there's another HR in the read page as well, which is causing the second one to show up.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Corin.
My bad. I don't know. Everything's compiled successfully, but my homepage just isn't showing up.
You have your outlet in place.
From the layout, and then we.
Okay, share screen. Let's take a look. You shared the, oh yeah, switch over to your code. Let me request remote. All right, so in our app, that fix it? You put a C in your children, you let them be in charge, and then all hell breaks loose. So you gotta put them in their place. Keep a lowercase c on them. All right, why did we do all of this work? This allows us to be able to put something like a nav bar right here. And because we know components can go in other components, we could make a navbar component. We could import that component right here, and we could put it as part of our layout. Now, if we had that navbar up here, that navbar would show up on every page. Okay, that's kind of cool, but we could even theoretically, and in practice, take this a step further. Sometimes you have one layout that wants to show up for one set of user and another layout that you want to show up for a second set of users. Sometimes you want your end user that is not signed in to see a couple pages that have one layout, but as soon as you log in, your nav bar may change or a sidebar may change or whatever it is. You can control all of that right here. Based off of what path is going to show up, you could make another layout. Don't follow me, just showing you an example. Something like path, anything that starts with admin is going to show up the element admin layout. And in that admin layout, we are going to have children with something like a path of like set password and element of set password. No one follow me, just showing an example. And we could add in other things there too, like I don't know, profile. Now, anyone who is on the page /admin/set password is going to get this admin layout. This admin layout is a component that would have to have an outlet in it so that the two routes inside of that layout could show up. But you can see how these URLs start building off of each other. This is hypothetically how you could build out multiple layouts based off of whatever the URL is. So if they are just on the home page or the new post or the read page, they're going to get the default layout. But if they're on /admin/set password, they're going to see this admin layout, which may have a different navbar, different content, any of that. The important thing here, and I'm just going to comment this out, the important thing here is that you understand these children are showing up in this outlet But the whole reason why we do this layout, and you can call this anything, you could call this structure, you could call this template, you could call this, I don't know, whatever you wanted to. The important thing is that you understand that these children, based off of whatever path we're currently are going to show up in this outlet along with whatever other content is in this component.
Is outlet just like a generic word that's always used, or did we get it from something else?
Because we imported it from the router, it's not technically a hook, but this outlet is coming from the router, so we have to call it outlet. I feel like I answered a question, but that was not the question you were asking.
Well, it I don't know if it really sunk in or not. I'm normally we get those, words from somewhere else. I'm just trying to figure out like
We're getting it from the router up here. We're importing the outlet here. And then the outlet's job that it knows how to do because it's coming from the router is to take whatever child matches over here, take that element and stick it in over here.
so that's always gonna say outlet no matter. Okay, that's what I meant. It's like it's a
We
Nope.
can change the name of the layout component. We cannot change the name of the outlet component.
okay, so it's always gonna be outlet.
Yes. Yeah, whenever we import components from packages, we mostly use the name that it's giving us. Did that, maybe the light bulb isn't fully on, but hopefully that sparked a couple ideas for your capstones of, oh, well, I've got this nav bar on 40 different pages and it's a real pain in the ass to add a new link on every single page, but I could just use that component and I could import that component on every single page that I need it, or I could have some big master layout component that is going to take care of showing everything up, and then I can just change it in one place. You can find the stuff about the outlets on the React router page. Outlet is a React router function, not necessarily a React function. But if you go over to components and down to outlet on the React router documentation, they'll show you the code for the outlet. And then we aren't using this syntax. The syntax is a little bit older. But you can see how these routes are inside this parent route. It kind of translates to how we do it with the children. I actually like this syntax more, but the whole React router community is moving over to the whole router provider, and the router provider shows you the example of the children being used here in the documentation. This is a little bit more of a detailed example, and it's using component instead of element, but it's the same idea. And yes, I do reference the documentation while I was doing that up on my other monitor. So whenever I'm looking up here, I'm cheating and either looking at the chat or reading documentation as I go. All right. Put it in the calendar, mark it in your history books. I am done a full 27 minutes early tonight. If I have fried your brains, you are welcome to, and I mean this, leave early. I have nothing left to cover. However, if you are intrigued by React and just love spending time with me, you can throw out an idea or a concept that you don't understand, and I will go back through it in this project and add it. Corwin, Jen, burned into your eyes isn't a problem. It's when you go to bed and it's in your dreams and then you can't escape me. That's when it's really bad.
It's also when you can't read it in your dreams. Like you could see so much and it's all jumbled and you can't read any of it.
Unexpected curly brace online 9 million. No. Palash, what's up? Seriously, you guys are welcome to get out of here if you are fried. Go ahead, Palash.
I just have a suggestion to make. Like, how about like we try moving the HTML, CSS portfolio to React? It's gonna like benefit all of us if that is a good idea.
We will do that. Totally gonna cheat and look at what we did in cohort 4. So cohort 4, we do the blog and we spend 3 days on the blog, not just 2. And then our last one of our last days of React, we do portfolio. But that is project week in review. Oh, I do have that. So yeah, we will move the portfolio. Yeah, I've got that slotted in. So we will do that next week. We will move that over.
Okay, perfect.
The challenge right now is figuring out what you don't know, and what you don't know is the hardest thing to figure out, right? So that's what I would push you guys on. And the yeet that I am coming up with tomorrow for all of y'all is figuring out what don't you know about React. And so that's going to be the challenge, to test yourselves and explore that territory and say, can I do a use state on my own? Can I do a use effect on my own? Can I do styling? Do I understand the imports? Can I set up routing? Can I use a layout or an outlet? All of that kind of stuff is what's coming down the pipeline. All things that you should be testing yourself, pushing yourselves, and seeing if you can do on your own.
I got a question.
Mhm.
Oh, this is not a dumb question, but the SAS that we installed, it's just always going to be there now as long as we label the file correctly, or is that something that we do every time that we start a new project?
Not a dumb question. You need it every time you start a new project, but not every time that you make a new SAS file in that project.
Okay.
So when we run npm install, unless we specifically say -- global, npm will always be project specific. We can npm install things globally, but for the vast majority of the time, we install it project specific. The reason why we do that is because we may be using a newer version of SAS in a new project, but then if a project was made 10 years ago, we would want the older version of SAS for that project. And so because of that, npm by default installs at the project level, and then you could always upgrade that, down the road.
Oh, okay. If nobody else has a question right at the moment, can we just kind of go over the outlet again? Like, so we use it in conjunction with the React router DOM, or is the outlet like the parent itself, and then we need to add files?
That's more like it. So what we're doing is the outlet knows how to work because it's coming in from the router. And what the router is doing is it's using these routes over here to say layout is going to be the parent. So all of this stuff is going to show up. And then based off of whatever child matches the URL here, it's going to take that child element and put it into the outlet.
Okay, that helps. I thought I was like looking at it wrong.
Yeah, we're gonna just take whatever element matches and we're gonna dump it into the outlet. And the way the outlet knows to work is because it's coming in from the router. And the router at this level knows what element to show up because we pulled in layout, which is coming from the layout file, which is this one over here, which has the outlet in it to show the children.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any
Here's
other
something
questions?
Probably no.
Yes.
What is React Router DOM?
React Router DOM is an NPM.
It's so self-explanatory.
React Router DOM is an NPM package. It is surprisingly not built into React, which is like React only does single page applications. And you're like, but that's so dumb. Facebook has got a gazillion pages on it. Well, React by default does not support multiple pages. So React Router is literally just a package that's built to obviously work with React that allows you to have multiple routes or URL paths, and the router is what controls what element shows up for that path.
Okay, so that explains outlet a lot better. Is like outlet is a piece of that. So you wouldn't use
Outlet,
outlet
yes.
unless you used React Router DOM.
Yes, the outlet is basically just allowing you to shove a child component into a parent component based off of the route.
Okay.
So like the same way the children worked here before, we didn't even have the children, right? So what
Yeah.
was the router doing? It was saying, oh, the path, the URL in the browser's new post, make that new post show up. That component new post show up. Oh, the URL changed. Now we're on the read. Because of the read, make the read show up. Well, what happened on the read? Read actually had something coming from React Router DOM. It had this thing called use params. The use params let us get access to the timestamp from right here. Outlet kind of works the same way, except the difference is outlet is closer to link in that it is taking whatever is in the children here and making it show up over here. So this is the parent. The router is saying, hey, no matter what path we're on, always show this layout. And then it goes to show the outlet. And it's like, well, what's my child element? And it goes, well, what URL are you in? Oh, you're in the read page. So take this read element and shove it into the element of the layout component.
Okay, so can you use outlet more than one time? And if you can, do you have to put like an ID or a class on it?
You
Is that-
can, but I don't know why you would want to,
Am I
because
screwing it up?
you could theoretically put an outlet up here and get the content twice.
So you can only use the outlet once. Because it's always
Well, technically you can use it twice.
well,
but
yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It wouldn't.
you can use an outlet in an outlet if you have it in separate components. Like if you wanted to nest several levels deep, you can, but
Mhm.
I wouldn't suggest that. All the outlet is doing, I think you're overthinking. All
I
the
really
outlet is doing is saying, hey, layout is going to show this whole thing here.
Oh, because you got the cons layout over there. Okay. And then it's
Now, because I got the layout here, right?
okay, and it's returning the children. All right, that's why I was
overtired. I was just missing the where it was calling the layout and the elements calling the layout. Okay.
Yep.
That the layout piece was what I was missing. I was like, wait a second, what? So like technically you could const something else and then put another outlet in there, but it's gonna go back to whatever you're calling the element.
Correct.
Okay. That's why I was like, wait a second, I was missing the const
And
the
you
calling
you
the element.
could do something like this. You could say like const navbar is another component, and this navbar could be in its own file too. And you can, you know, return a div with an ahref to like Google. And you can throw that navbar in here. And now that navbar's that Google link is going to show up on every page.
Okay.
Because it's above the outlet. And if for whatever reason I wanted to make that be like more of a footer, I could do that too, so that Google would show up underneath whatever child element was showing up here based off of this path.
Okay.
Amberlyn, not a link because it's an external site. I link to Google, so it's going outside of my page, so I still use an anchor tag. But if I was linking to a page inside my router, I would use the link.
See, this is the time of night where we come up with the best questions because I'm so overtired. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about and I'm overthinking everything.
There's a very thin line between alcohol helping and alcohol not helping your coding. It's a very, very thin line. And sometimes you hit it for like 10 minutes and then you go over it and you're like, I can't debug for my life.
Maybe that's the problem because I don't drink. Maybe I should start drinking.
Not that I'm implying that anyone is drinking during class, but there are times where I'm like, my brain hurts so much right now. I'm not going to be able to solve this without alcohol. No, that is the wrong thought. If the alcohol is not going to help.
It's like playing pool or darts. You get like that 10-minute window where the alcohol really helps and then it just screws everything up.
Yes, that's it.
I got a question.
Yeah.
How can we add a link for the user to add an attachment to a post that they make in the blog?
Building the user interface for that is really easy, and I can give you that answer now. Handling that file in the back end and being able to store it is, I'm not kidding you, it takes me about a week to do it every single time I have to store a file in a database. It is ungodly hard, and one of the things that's the easiest feature to ask for and the hardest feature to add. With that said, the front end is really easy. On the new post page, all you need to do is go down to like where all of your other inputs are, and you can just throw an input, and instead of a type of text, you do a type of file instead. And when you save that and come over here and go back and make a new post, you now get this lovely choose file button. And you click on it and it opens up your files and you think, all right, great.
I was about to say, oh my gosh, that's super easy. That's it.
That's it. Until you have to deal with saving that file somewhere. And then you open Pandora's box of DevOps and AWS S3 and multi-part file uploads and multing them together and storing the file path and dealing with file name collisions. And sorry, were we just talking about drinking? I have yet to find a easy way to do that, and it's such a pain that there are entire companies that exist that give you what they call an SDK, a software development kit, which is like a NPM package kind of thing that deal with file uploads for you. But it is a one of those things that for your capstone, I would seriously consider putting the input type file in there and then just faking it in the demo. But if you really want to get that to work, I did that with a student and went through the whole like S3 flow, and he got to the end of it and was like, yeah, I retained about 15% of that. Unfortunately, it's just a really hard thing to do. Doable, I know how to do it. It just takes a lot of time to do it.
Okay.
And it's such a traumatic experience that I can't even remember what student I did it with. But it is doable. If you get everything else done and working on your capstone and you're like, file uploads are the one thing I really want to get working, we can definitely tackle that in a one-on-one.
Okay, thanks.
There are very few things that strike a nerve, but file uploads are one of them for me.
Okay, I
Last
think I
call. Go ahead, Jen.
figured out why the layout confused me so much.
Yes.
Or the outlet did. It's because like when we put another page in there and we're referencing another page where we want something to pop up, it was like, it almost looks the same way as this does, as the outlet does.
Well, that's intentional.
That's why I was like, why would we use layout if we could just throw another page in there?
Because the layout is what we want
outlet.
to show up on every page. And then the outlet is what shows up in that layout.
Yeah, I quit. I'm fucking quit. I don't know what, I can't like get it out. I'm so tired. I got to work at 8:30 this morning. We got our ass handed to us. It looks like where we would reference a page where we'd stick the page in there and be like, here, like read CSS is right here. But instead we're using the outlet. I don't know. That's all I'm saying. All right, I'm out of here. Have fun. Good night. You
night.
guys have a good one.
Last call for questions. All right. Have a good night, everyone. See ya.
Good night.